definitely let that on. I knew it was a feedback. Sorry about that. All right, we are live with yet another episode of Theta Talk. This week again with me, I have once again my good friend Kyle, Mr. Goolsby all the way over there, and then in the very far corner to end it all, we got Mr. Jalen. All right, and without further ado, for those of you who don't know what it's about, this show is just a way for us to really get out and vocalize a bunch of the different things that are going on in the community and to speak on behalf of both current history as well as current events. So this week, I really wanted to talk about really Black History Month as a whole. This is our first show during actual Black History Month. We do them every Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. But this is our first one actually on during Black History Month. And it just so happens that February 7th, 1926 was actually the very, very start of Black History Month. Back then it was Negro History Week, and it was just a way for them to go out and teach. So I really wanted us, and I know we kind of talked about it before, I wanted us to talk about the importance of really controlling and teaching our own narrative because, as we have said before, if we don't control our narrative, who does? And on top of that, if you look around history and throughout current events, as black people, we are the only people who are not actually controlling our narrative. We are waiting for others to come and help us. We're waiting for others to act right. We are letting so many people into our space to act as, oh, we stand in solidarity, but when it's time to actually do work, they start falling back. So I just kind of want to, open the floor. And I know we talk about the importance of us controlling our own narrative, but what is the importance of having everyone come into our space? Where's the importance of, how do I want to word this? Do you all think that it's beneficial or harmful for us to have other people come into our spaces to try to help us?
See, I feel like it's circumstantial because at some points I feel like some people genuinely, want to help the cause and really are here to fight with us to some sense. But on the other hand, you have to think some others are just going to try and use the movement either politically or a way to benefit them monetarily or anything like that. So I just really think you have to come together as one first before we start allowing other people outside to come and try and help us as well.
All right, Ken, Jalen, also.
Just to piggyback off what he was saying, just be mindful of who you trust, and as far as letting into our space and whatnot, because not everybody is, here for a good time. They're here for, deceitful times and to use to get what they want out of, what we're trying to achieve as far as our goal.
Basically the same as what both of y'all said. Just be careful, because, like Kyle said, some people will use it for political gain. Some people are genuinely there to help, but then there are others that see, hey, this is the opportunity for me to go to the next level in my position. Hey, I can use this, such. Basically, ride the coattail of whatever is happening during that time to basically elevate themselves, and they really don't care anything for the actual cause or us as a people. So just be mindful. Think about the people and see their actions. The action speaks louder than words. Hey, they may say that they're for you, but are they actually for you?
I definitely agree with that aspect because we get so caught up in allowing other people to come try to help us that we actually do more damage. If you look, as crazy as it may seem, if you go to different parts of town, for example, we'll say you go to the Asian part of town, it's Asian ran, they control the shopping center, they only hire people who look like them, speak their native language, stuff like that. And same thing with everybody does that except for us. We are so eager to let someone else into our space to be like, okay, cool, well they're helping us. But that's not necessarily true. Just because somebody stands with you isn't fair. Uh, not all skin folk, kinfolk. Just because they look like you, they don't mean that they there. It's crazy as it may seem, not every brother is a friend, and not every friend is a brother. But at the same time, with movements like this, we cannot. I personally feel that we cannot allow others to overly compensate themselves into it, because then it no longer becomes a movement that we stand on about ourselves. If you look throughout history, most of us were actually able to really thrive largely because we were sticking together. And I know we kind of talked about that last week. So seldom do you see all of us actually working together. We are so quick to divide based on looks or hair texture or you take there's so many dividing factors that we're not actually using as an opportunity to come together. Um, and as we relate that more so to Black History Month, I know we kind of touched on this before, and we spoke, if not last week, the week before, that we had said that there are definitely ways that we need to come together, and that we definitely need to speak to a lot of the older generation because they harvest knowledge that we do not have and will not be able to gain access to in any other way except for through them. I kind of want to reiterate the notion and bring it back up to the table and just kind of really just kind of ask, yes, we know the importance of it. We understand the power of it, and we understand that we are not executing the way we need to. Do you think that we should almost start from scratch?
I wouldn't say start from scratch, but I definitely feel like uh, we have to use our resources and human capital a lot better than we are at the moment because we have a lot of people who have a lot of power, honestly. We have so many, celebrities, people like that of a high stature and have the economic equity to make a lot of things happen. But we really just choose when we want to help with movements or we choose when we want to help other people instead of trying to be as united as we can all at one time. So I feel like it really starts with people who have the resources, honestly, just being willing to sacrifice to some extent.
Yeah, that's honestly a deep question that you asked. Based on what Cal said, use what we have as of right now, but sometimes starting new can be good in a way because we're not rewriting history. We just telling the younger generation based off what we know as of right now. And I guess passing that down could be a start because if we notice the issue, we could be the beginning of something, that was once erased or tried to be hidden or covered up.
All right, yeah, me personally, like I definitely believe that, and I said it before, our community is not necessarily created by us nor for us. So I definitely think we need to go ahead and recultivate that, take it back. And although start from scratch may not necessarily been the right terminology, I definitely believe that we definitely need to take a step back because so often we get caught up in, oh well, we've made progress, and then we get complacent. So if we take a step back and say, yes, we've made progress, but are we actually doing what we need to do? Okay, no. Okay, well, we have already trapped ourselves in the mindset of, okay, well, we're good enough. We've already trapped ourselves in complacency. Why wouldn't we start over? Why wouldn't we say, okay, you know what? Rather than just celebrating Black History Month every every other month, we are shopping purely black-owned artisans. If it did not come from, was not originated by, or made for black people, we're not doing it. Then all of a sudden things change. We've seen throughout history how powerful that is. We've seen throughout history how we can pretty much corrupt the entire economy and change things into our perspective, into our start bringing generational wealth. And we've seen how we can do that in the past. It's really important how that works. So I definitely think that that's something that we should definitely touch on because so often we fall back into the complacency era rather than try to move forward and put in actual steps to move forward, if that makes sense.
See, but the only issue I have with what you just said was I feel like people who were facing adversity to a higher extent, obviously, they were kind of bonded more by trauma, I guess you could really say. So they had a reason to stick together and always want to fight with each other to always benefit one another because it really benefits them as a whole. But
See, I definitely believe that what you said is crazy because I was actually going to save this topic for another week. You kind of said it. Um, we are actually, as crazy as it may seem, we're definitely becoming very desensitized to a lot of what's going on. You say we're not bonded by trauma, but now, let's think about it. The trauma that they were having, they were segregated, right? Um, beat by police.
Mm-hmm.
They were, lynched. Meanwhile, we're facing the same thing. It's just more modern. And now instead of being segregated, now we're being, we can't even get into certain spaces because we're not qualified, even though our qualifications are high. It may not be as prominent, but you can still turn on the TV or open up your phone, and it's not too hard to find another police shooting. They're not lynching us, but they're still killing us, and that, they're still doing the same things. They've just changed it. And in reality, I believe that we're actually becoming very desensitized to the subject. Because think about it. If you see it over and over and over again, because initially it was just every now and then, so we were so shocked, we were very outraged. But now we see it so often that we're just like, oh, it happened again. I'm not surprised. And then we kind of like, now all of a sudden we're not really trying to do anything anymore. Because they sat there and they've made it so prominent. It is so in your face. It is so obvious and so repetitive that you get sick of seeing it. So I definitely believe that we are still bonded by trauma, but now it's so in our face that we kind of just turn a blind eye to it.
I understand that, but also I will say, even though the same things are kind of happening just in a more monitorized way, as like you were saying, I also think people just don't care as much because now, say you see like a police brutality on like Instagram or something, you're just gonna repost it and go on along about your day. When other people, back in the day, they would actually make sacrifices to, whether it was their transportation, anything like that, they just decided they were going to do what they needed to do to get their point across. I just feel like we don't have the same fight in us right now as a whole.
I really like that. What are some current, I guess you can say boycotts, we can say, like you said, they took away the transportation and we saw how it made a difference. They said, hey, we're not buying anything, and we saw how that made a difference. Right. Well, now, what are some sacrifices that you all think that we could possibly make? And, it's real easy to talk about sacrifice, but a lot of people say, yeah, we can give up cell phones. We're not going to shop at this company. But I'm not giving up mine. Right. So, you know what I mean? Hey, we're not shopping at this store because they stand for this. But I'm not going to lie, they do make some real nice whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're not eating at this restaurant because they treat us wrong. Because think about it, right? It's just how you say it's very common for us to see it. We have also been able to open up the same internet and see where there are hair supply stores that are ran by other ethnicities that accuse us of stealing and then treat us wrong and call us all type of bigoted names. But meanwhile, we're like, oh, this is so unfair. But I do need a new weave. I do need me a new. I ain't gonna lie, I do need a new do-rag. Mine's getting a little worn out. Let me go back and get another one. My bond's getting a little stretched out. I might need another one. So what are some actual boycotts that we can actually take and put into place that are actually feasible? Because although, we make stuff and we say, oh, well, this is easy, it's real easy until it's time to put stuff into action. And now people have to make that personal sacrifice, like you said, people are trying to do.
Something that starts feasible, support more black-owned businesses that, they make that's related to stuff that we want to boycott. If we get more, black-owned businesses, we could support more black-owned businesses. It's very few, so it's like, it's hard to boycott the actual thing that, speaks negative on our end as far as, trying to support us as a whole.
I'm smiling and I'm laughing, not because you're wrong. I definitely understand what you're saying. But I'm kind of like smiling because I'm like, oh, there's a lot. I don't know if you know this, there's a lot.
Well,
the problem is
the advertising,
it's not the advertising.
Like,
it's hidden.
It's hidden.
It's very much hidden. And the ones that we do see, a lot of them are they're overcharging. They're infiltrating saturated markets and then they're overcharging. So they're trying to make it hard for us to even do so. But like I do agree that we definitely need to expand our market. It used to be a point in time where if you needed your car fixed, you can go down the street. Hey, old school Jimmy, he takes care of everybody, doesn't charge crazy. He can get it taken care of. We had more hands-on skills. It used to be, hey, we have actual skills rather than just knowledge. I'm not knocking knowledge. I'm not knocking education. But it used to be we had trades. In fact, if you look at history, trades were a lot more popular than college. It wasn't until those trades became so powerful that not only were we making more money than other races, but we were also able to protect our own people a lot better, that they said, oh, education is the way to go. And then as you saw, education was the way to go, they got us to think that, and then they made it harder for us to get education. College used to be free. Now all of a sudden, hey, they're getting in and they're doing well. So then they make it a lot more expensive.
Right.
Then we make HBCUs and they give us old textbooks and a bunch of other stuff. And then look what happened. We started being smart. So then they try to open up other schools. So now we infiltrate there. So now instead of us having our own space where we can control our narrative and we can infiltrate and make sure that we take care of ourselves, we control what we learn, how much money we make, who we work with. Now all of a sudden we are so eager to go to other spaces. Now it's no longer that. Now we're in these other spaces and they control. Think about it. If I go to your house and you have no, you say I gotta take my shoes off, I take my shoes off. We're in my house, I say I can leave my shoes on, I can leave my shoes on. So it's really about controlling the space that we're in more so than just, like helping is definitely important, very important. But if we're not controlling our own space, think about it. How many black-owned products aren't really black-owned? Oh, it's made for black hair texture. But if you look at it, like the top 10 people in that company don't even share any remote features with us.
It just goes back to doing your own research again, like looking at mission statements, looking at what people actually like intend to do with the money that they're making, and looking at these top execs and CEOs and things like that, and trying to really see how they are, because a lot of the information is all out there. A lot of the law requires you to release information publicly about your company.
Mm-hmm.
So it's out there for you to find, but it's just the fact that you have to really go out there and search for it and look for it, or else you'll just be blinded by whatever you see off this one ad or something that'll just be on the front of your mind. So.
All right. Well, that actually brings us to our very first commercial break. So yes, y'all enjoy this good song by, well, we decided to bring it up a little modern and have Rod Wave take this song over.
Man, Courtney. You would?
I'm not sure this is the clean version.
Oh God.
As soon as I hear it, I'm gonna just turn it off. But then we'll go in a second. We go about color switch. All right, that one was a little quick. But yeah, we actually started a little bit late, so I realized that although we had our first song segment, we actually didn't have as much time on that. So now we'll hand it over to Mr. Kyle for his little one piece.
Alright, so the topic that I'm trying to bring to the table today is about code switching. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically having to switch the way you talk, act, dress, things like that in a different setting depending on who you're around. So I know people are becoming more, I guess, accustomed to things like tattoos, dreads, things like that. So how prevalent would you say it is in modern society?
Like how common it is?
Yeah, code switching. Do you think it's as prevalent as it was like in the past?
I wouldn't say so. Most people back then, like, they rock what they rock. They want to get, up to date with, during that era, during that genre, that time. So I feel like it just changed as, the generation changed over time.
Mr. King?
I would say is you do see it somewhat, but I wouldn't say it's as much as it is back then, because back then people, they were taught stay in your place. So you would see people, look down or move out of the way whenever they saw someone of the opposite race coming towards them to fit in their place. And also you would hear them sort of change their vocabulary when they were talking to someone of quote higher class than them back in the day. But in today's society, you can see we don't care how high of a class you are. At the end of the day, we are both people, and we both gonna talk to each other like we are both people. At the end of the day, no one is higher than anybody else, regardless of how much money you make, regardless of what education that you have. So some people do it, but I wouldn't say it's as prevalent as it was back then.
Um, I definitely agree that it's still around, but I definitely challenge say it's not as prevalent. I think, but now sort of now it's not as negative in a sense.
Right.
It used to be, oh well, somebody is talking like this, so I gotta change how I talk to make sure I fit in, to make sure I don't fit a stereotype. Now I see it kind of happen typically when somebody tries you. Like you'll talk regular, and somebody will try you, and like, oh well, he looks like this, and he talks like this, so this is how he must act. And once they try to essentially play you like you stupid, now all of a sudden that's when we start to bring up the vocabulary. That's when you start to articulate a little bit more. That's when you start to quote a couple higher sources. Now all of a sudden, now they look shocked. Not only do they not think that we can do it, most of the time they can't even keep up. So I feel like we definitely code switch, but now it's more of a sort of a defense mechanism. It's more of an attack. It's like, okay, if you think I'm stupid, watch me, watch me speak up to you. Now you speak up. Now who's really stupid?
See, I'm I'm really in the belief that it still happens fairly often, in my opinion. Just more in a professional setting. It's just certain things you're not expected to do. Like you're not supposed to talk a certain way if you're in a professional environment. You're not supposed to wear certain things if you're in a professional environment. And I understand it to some extent, but if you want to make the best workers and the best company in general, you should make everyone the most comfortable that they can be, in my opinion. And whether that's letting them talk how they want to talk or whatever it is, just feeling free to be themselves, that's how I feel like you get the most production out of people when they feel the most comfortable.
Uh, I'm not sure if that's when they get the most work done. Cause I'm not gonna lie, I'm real comfortable. I'm in my bed laying down, not doing anything.
Okay, to some
But I
extent,
definitely I get what you're saying. To where how you are and how you're feeling around definitely makes you feel a little bit more comfortable, do a little bit more work. If you don't really know anybody, you kind of keep to yourself. You're not networking, know what you need to do. But even then, now that you mentioned code switching, I feel like it happens definitely more in a work environment than it
mm-hmm.
does in a school environment. I know just from looking at right now, when I'm in class, I really don't speak up or I kind of just talk, however I feel like talking until I feel like I said, until I feel like somebody's tried my intelligence. That's when I'll speak up. But I know, for example, when I'm at work, and then I've got a bunch of people who come in there trying to be angry. I'm holding my tongue. Even then, that's technically code switching. Like I had an old man come in there. No, I want you to do what I told you to do. Give me what I ordered. And I was like, all right now, calm down. Anybody else, any other setting probably would have got cussed out. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna hold my tongue. Even then, like I said, that's definitely a form of code switching. So I feel it's more of in a professional setting than it is in just a casual setting. School, who's really trying you?
Yeah.
Who's really putting you in a predicament where you need to? Now all of a sudden in a workplace, kind of has your money involved, so you're a little bit, I don't know, a little standoffish on it.
Now, I wanted to bring, since we're all obviously educated, we're all in college at the moment. I also wanted to ask about professors. So, the type of professors that we see, what would you say the most common, like, race and gender of a professor is at Georgia Southern?
For my department, it's a little mixed, definitely predominantly white, but it's mixed between males and females um, more than anything.
All right, Ken?
In my department, it's definitely more male dominant. I think we have one female professor, but it's very diverse. Majority, white and a few, Asian.
How about you, Jen?
For my department, is very diverse, whether it's race or gender. I've had a semester when I've had uh, African American male teacher, African American female teacher, Asian teacher that was female, as well as a male Asian teacher, as well as a white male professor. So it's very diverse for my department.
Okay, and I can attest to that. I think it's a pretty well-rounded selection of professors here at Georgia Southern. But I know on other campuses, it's still an issue where there's a lot of just old white male professors who are just teaching a single narrative. And I wanted to ask y'all what y'all thought about that and how we would go about fixing it because we need people, who get PhDs and are willing to teach the youth and people coming up. So how do you think we should go about fixing that?
I definitely agree to where you say it's important because I'm not gonna lie. When I just look at some of my teachers, I know the ones who I feel the most comfortable with, asking more questions, being more involved, are the ones who somewhat look like me to an extent. Some of the other ones I'm like, all right, I gotta fill out what they do. I gotta listen to what they say, see how they truly act. And granted, just because they look like me doesn't mean that they think how I do or act like I do, but it's still, I definitely feel just a little bit more comfortable because now I'm like, okay, let me truly see how this goes. Um, the way to go about that, I definitely believe that education should become more higher paid. Um, and it's crazy. I wrote about this in one of my classes. I definitely believe that America is very hypocritical, especially in terms of funding. Um, for example, we just sent, well, not just, but a while ago, we had sent like, I think 1.7, I want to say, it was billion or trillion. Either way, it's still a whole lot.
To Ukraine.
To Ukraine, yeah. So we can send all that, but at the same time, we're quick to say we don't have money. We don't have money for the school system. We don't have money to fix the police training. We don't have money to make sure that the little inner city schools are getting what they need to survive. We don't have money to make sure that you all have books. We don't have money for this.
They don't have money to forgive loans.
They don't have the money to do it, but we have the money that's elsewhere. So I definitely believe that it's very hypocritical in that state because we do have the funding to do so. It's just not a priority. Um, as for making it a priority, I definitely believe it comes down to us, because I definitely believe we should be very us oriented. We can easily point the finger, but what can we do to fix it? So I believe two ways to fix that. One is to make sure that we are actually teaching in a way that connects to other people.
Right.
If we only teach in ways that connect to us, guess what? We're the minority. We don't really have that say so. You know what I mean? And the other way is really just to make sure that we are voting properly, voting for people with our ideals and who are truly representing us, not just people who are with our party. Because we're being honest, being part of a party doesn't really make too much sense, especially considering these parties were created and idealized and pretty much have their roots during a time period when we weren't even allowed to vote. They have their roots in a time period where we weren't even really considered full people. In fact, we weren't even considered 3/5 of a person at the time. We weren't. They made us consider 3/5 of a person, or 3/5 of a person, so that they can vote better, so they can have more control over voting. See how that works? So like we're attached to these parties rather than looking at the actual message that they're pushing.
And speaking of voting and parties, do you feel that we as a people are doing our necessary duty to vote and elect those people, as well as how do you feel the Democratic Party and the Republican Party feel about us as a people?
Um, Me personally, are we doing our duty? No. And it's sad because I hear a lot of people talk about, oh well, they don't really care what we think anyway, so why am I going to vote? I definitely believe that this is a issue that we need to fix from the ground up. I feel that we're attacking it the wrong way. We're trying to get the older generations to vote. Granted, they have a very dominant voice, but we're like, hey, we got to get them to vote. In reality, that's not what we need to be focused on. What we need to be focused on is a bunch of the younger people who aren't really voting, who have the power to vote and can really have a voice. And on top of that, if we can get them to understand how important it is to vote, especially at a younger age, over time, it'll put us where we need to be. As for the parties, well, if you look at it, I believe it was actually, well, when you go back and look at history, the parties don't really take us all that serious. They don't. And really, it wasn't until we started having our own parties and stuff like that. Um, because even then, at one point, the Black Panther Party was actually considered a party. It wasn't until we started having stuff like that that now they're trying to really use us. They want us for votes. That's how they see it. Say what they can to appease us to get a vote. And even then, once they get that vote, what do? They take off. They'll show up, come to the community. Hey, I'm here. I support you all. I got your vote. Cool. Bye. And they'll leave. You'll see them in another 2-3 years when it's time for them to come back and they need that other vote. So, do they take us serious? No. How do we fix that? Focus on the youth. Those have a very powerful voice and aren't using it For example, 18 and older. How many 18 and older people are on this campus? Close to all of them. How many of them are actually voting? Close to none of them. That's an issue. And on top of that, not even have a party that's necessarily for us, but definitely have a party that is controlled by us. If you look in any type of legislation, we don't really have that big of a presence, which, is expected. We are a minority, we're not going to have a major presence. But when you look at it and we're just specks here and there, that's an issue. There are a lot of minorities in these different cities and in these different states that are very, very powerful. Many capitals and many cities are black dominated, but they have very little say so in what that state votes on. That's an issue. Think about it. Atlanta is the capital of Georgia. We Before Atlanta, Savannah was a very dominant force. Both of those communities are very black populated. Meanwhile, Georgia's been a red state for how long? Granted, it switched out that long ago, but think about how long it's been a red state. But the capital, where most things are housed, the heart of the state is black. But we can't even control any type of voice. So we definitely need to work on that. But like I said, a lot of people just have a misconception. They think, oh, what I say doesn't matter, so they don't work on it. We got to start on the bottom up, make sure that our presence is felt in these different parties, because even if we don't want to create our own party, if we're not even trying to put ourselves into a predominant spot to where we actually have a say so in the party that exists, then what?
I think it also comes down to people making excuses to some extent as well. Because, like John was saying, some people believe, like, oh, my voice won't be heard, there's no point in me going. Okay. Just, if it doesn't matter to you that much, you might as well just go ahead and place a vote anyways, because what can it hurt you? And also, I feel like the system is also to blame as well. Because if, say, you have, like, some weed on you or something like that, okay, then you're a felon, now you can't vote anymore. So it's just things like that as well that we also have to address. So I do think that, us as a black community is partially to blame, but I feel like we can't put all the blame on ourselves while we still have to fix other things in the system as well.
I'm gonna argue on that one really fast. I do agree where we can't blame ourselves for everything, but part of it is on the system. But we're not even like you said. It almost goes. It's almost circular reasoning. Well, we can't fix the legislation if we're not voting. We're not voting because we don't think that we can fix the legislation.
Right.
So I definitely think that yes, although that there are some issues that are due largely to the system and how things are set up and how things are structured, we're not even capitalizing on what we do have. If we don't even have 50% of our vote, we have 50% of people who are eligible to vote, and they're not even acting on it. We can't even get those other 50% eligible to vote because the 50% who can aren't doing their part.
So based on everything that we just talked about as far as voting, parties and whatnot, and getting the youth involved, do you think it is imperative that we gain more knowledge on how politics work?
Yes.
Most definitely. I know a lot of people, just from back home over here, friends in Statesboro, they ain't even know how to register to vote. Like, this is a major issue. And then they don't do research on who they should vote for, what the parties really represent, things like that. So if we don't understand those basic fundamental aspects of just politics, you don't have to be heavily involved in politics and want to be a politician or anything like that. But it's also always important to have at least a basic level of knowledge you can make competent decisions.
So where do you think that could possibly start as far as letting the youth know how politics work? Should it be put in enforced in classes at schools? Does it start at home? Like,
I'll be honest, I don't think it'll ever get allowed to be put into a schooling system. So I feel like we have to take it upon ourselves as a community and just help one another out. Like, I know how to register to vote. So if anyone were to ask me or anything like that, I would be more than willing to help them. But I also know people who would just be like, okay, go figure it out. So we also have to look out for each other in a sense, because like we were talking a few weeks ago, they don't even let us talk about certain parts of black history in schools. So they would never let us go ahead and teach black students how to vote, because that would be such a large uproar in what we can potentially do with that. So they would never allow that to happen.
And also going back to the part where you stated, we as a people say, oh, my vote is going to matter anyway. What I say to that is, if our vote didn't matter as much, they wouldn't be passing legislation in order to restrict us from being able to vote.
Right.
Because as you saw with the 2020 election, after that, as well as the 2016 election, how close it came. After that, you saw red state after red state after red state passes certain legislation in order to restrict people from being able to do certain things at the polls. Um, Things such as closing early polling stations, the way you can get an absentee ballot. Some states changed their requirements for that as well as the timing of those drop off boxes and polling stations. Not only that, some states passed legislation that was saying you weren't allowed to pass out water and things to people standing in line. Um, Also, those early polling stations would benefit us as a people because they know that we are people that usually vote early anyway because we have jobs during the day. We can't get off of work in order to go stand in a long line in order to vote. Most of the people that are able to get off of those jobs on election day are Republican voters. So which is why they are trying to restrict those things for us to be able to vote.
And I kind of want to contradict what you said. Not necessarily to where I don't agree, but I don't think that we should have like those teachings necessarily in school because if we can see how badly they twist narratives now, do you really want them to teach how politics work? Like you can easily look up, hey, how does politics works, and then they're gonna put it in a spin to where, oh, well, if you vote like this, you're gonna, and if we're being honest, the youth are very perceptible. And that goes that way. Actually, I believe for males up to like 25, very impressionable, very perceptible. Meaning, what you tell them, they'll start to believe, they'll start to internalize it. I don't think that we want to sit there because we've already seen time and time again that the education system is not doing what it needs to do. It's not teaching things the way that we would hope that they would teach things. So I definitely believe that we need to switch things, and this is something that needs to be taught from knowledgeable people, but outside of a school setting. For example, how many times like I know we helped at the local middle school, but we're not obviously they don't really care too much about it. But if we just get a chance to just kind of talk to some of the parents, let the parents go in and take on. We definitely got to start pushing that narrative.
Right. I definitely believe that's important too. And one thing I do want to say about the schooling, I guess it would depend how we would present it to the kids. Because if you gave them a full spectrum and kind of just let them determine what they want to believe, then I feel like that system will work. But at the same time, if you have, say, a white professor, a white teacher, and a black professor and a black teacher, they teach two separate things, then at that point, they're not going to really get a full spectrum to really truly believe what they want to believe.
All right. Before we continue, I'm going to go ahead and hit that next little music break for us real fast. The great Aretha Franklin with a little respect. I think that definitely fits this topic really well. You said what? You said again?
Thank God.
I was trying to, but y'all just kept bringing it back.
No, I'm talking about the song choice. The first one, nigga.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
Can you hear something? Jay, gotta talk to me. I ain't gonna do you wrong, 'cause I don't just
I saw him take his shoes off in the beginning.
Funeral like a whole work shift.
It started at 11, so I'm sitting there watching it, right? Man, it hit about 2 o'clock. I said, shit, I'm hungry. I went and got me some weekend at like 4 o'clock.
Still saying that. Let her rest already. Shit, let you know.
My favorite singer.
For real?
Can't nobody help me. Not even you.
Yeah, that's good. And they were Keith.
Shit.
That's crazy.
Democratic Party.
I'll let you bring it back in. Actually, I don't know. Say what one team about you.
I'm not sure. I think I got a good enough question to kind of carry this. I think I got a good enough question to carry this.
He came up a couple months after we took it.
You said a couple months after.
Eric's my friend. Okay, August 2019.
Bet. All right, and we are back. And I know normally we switch the topic a little bit and we go on to another piece. I really like this conversation, so I'm gonna turn it back over to Kyle and let him keep it going.
All right, so we were talking a little bit about politics right before you went to a little break. So I wanted to talk about the Democratic Party because I know everybody kind of says all blacks are Democrats. So what does that really? What does the Democratic Party really mean to y'all? What do y'all think it truly represents?
I'll start off with this very bold. It means absolutely nothing. It means nothing. I owe that party no type of loyalty, just as they owe me no type of loyalty, and have proven time and time again to not really give me any type of loyalty. I believe what happens with these parties is people are choosing between, a rock and a hard place. And like, well, this one, the only really difference is when it comes to like a lot of the Republican parties, and I'll just use the most recent elections, is the Republican Party in many cases can come across very outright racist. And people, they don't really like it, but that is what it is. For example, when you look at Trump, right, when he pushed the death penalty for the Central Park Five, says that hey, these five young black males who are innocent should be put to death, even though it has been proven, and we should put them to death, right? He stands firmly on that. Took out a whole ass newspaper to do that. And then turns around a few years later and says, hey, you can just go up and grab a woman however you want and it's A-okay. It's a little hypocritical, but it shows. It shows where you're standing at. It's not necessarily about the action, it's about the people. So I think that's really what it means. And I don't think these parties really mean anything to me because they don't really stand for what we stand for. We're just saying, at least now I have somewhat of a chance by looking at some of these parties.
I think it's a bunch of sellouts, if you ask me. Um, the
It's a bold claim.
Speaking back on the 2020 election, a lot of people that know me know I'm a very political person. I watch elections like it's the Super Bowl. So going back to the primaries for the 2020 election, as you saw, Biden was not doing very good. The only reason that he became the front runner was in South Carolina when African Americans came out and voiced their opinion for him, which brought him to the forefront of the Democratic Party. Other candidates started dropping out. He started gaining momentum. Boom. General election. African Americans came out in record numbers, voted for him. Boom. Gets into the White House. I have not seen fairly as much legislation as I can count on one hand to support the African American community or to even target some of the issues that the African American community is facing. But yet we sat up here and we gave our support to you for these things for you to be able to win that election. But yet I'm not seeing any promises that were speaking from him running, any of that thing being introduced into Congress or anything such as that. Granted, I do know that the president, he doesn't make the laws or anything such as that, but he can push for those laws to be presented into Congress, and I have not seen any of that coming from him or any of the Democratic parties in either the House or the Senate.
And I definitely like what you said because so often people get caught up in, oh, it's the president. The president's not doing it. Being honest, the president's really just the face. The primaries, the Senate elections, all of these are probably more important if you ask me because that's when you actually have somebody in there. When you can control multiple pieces, if you can control the House, if you can control the Senate, now all of a sudden you have a chance. Now all of a sudden you have a chance to get some of these laws passed. You got a little bit more of a chance. It doesn't really mean that you're going to get too much, but you have more of a chance. And we're not even putting our people in the right spot. We're quick to just be like, I'll skip this one. Or if you do vote, I guess he's on this side of the party, so I'll vote on him. You're not even just checking off. So I definitely believe that to even have a fighting chance, we need to be more knowledgeable on a smaller scale. We're looking at the president like he's supposed to come and just solve everything, but in reality, they're just the face.
Mm-hmm.
They're really just the face of the nation. They don't really have too much say so on the laws and the legislation that's being passed.
Right. In reality, it's like I'm a big sports person, so it's really about sport, or like the same principle of sports. Like the NFL, the commissioner, he's just a face. He doesn't really have so much say so on what's going on in the league. Same thing with the NBA, the commissioner, same thing. So it's the same thing with the president. But I feel like there's such a like stigma about being an independent. People kind of look at you a certain way if you're say you're an independent or anything like that. But how do you feel it is? Do you think it's better to be an independent versus someone who checks straight democracy or straight Republican?
I definitely think independent is good, especially because if you look back at it, and this is rhetorical, I do want y'all to answer it. What have we always heard about a third party? About voting for a third party?
They never win.
They never win. It's a wasted vote. It's a wasted vote. So why would you do it? But if you look back at history, third part that term actually became very very popular when a third party was about to win, and then they were like, wait a minute, this guy's about no, we can't do that. So then they're like, oh, that's a wasted vote. You might as well just vote for this side because he closely aligns to this third party. Third party has a lot of power because now you're not no longer voting for a party. Now you're voting for what you think. Now you're voting with your thoughts, voting with your mind, so just voting. Now all of a sudden, people didn't like that. They decided, oh, it's a wasted vote, and people kind of fell for it. Well, it's a wasted vote. I might as well just pick it. You know what I mean? It's backside a rock and a hard place. You found a sweet spot. You were told that it's wrong. Now you're going back and forth. So that's why I think it's very important to be knowledgeable on all aspects of the political spectrum. Because if you only know one or two pieces, and then you listen to somebody else tell you for the other pieces, what do you really know? You know what you're told, and you hope that it's correct.
And then also going back to what you said about us being knowledgeable from a smaller scale, speaking recently, the midterm election should not have been that close.
Oh no.
If you look at the turnout numbers for the midterm elections compared to a presidential election, there is a huge difference, and that is a problem. If we want change in legislation to be passed, we should be showing up the same amount, if not even more, for those midterm elections than that presidential election. There should have been no reason for Herschel Walker to be that close to Warnock. Just listening at the ads, listening at the things he says, just listening to his campaign strategy and things such as that, you got to be an idiot. I'm sorry.
But even then, if you look at it, he was really just a token. Walker was really a token. It was, oh, well, they're going to vote for somebody who looks like them, which is what we've been saying. We want someone who looks like us. And they're going to vote for somebody like him. Let's get a puppy. That's really what he was.
That's exactly what he was.
If we're being honest. But like you said, because I met Senator Warnock. I actually talked to him, and I helped arrange some of the stuff that got him to actually come to states where I. So even then, he was really happy because even though we knew about it and we tried to push it a little bit on campus, the turnout wasn't really there. Granted, some people had class, this, that, the third, but even then, he was so happy to see younger voters. And on top of that, a lot of the older people who were out there were happy to see some of the youth come out there. They were happy to see some college students who were like, okay, now it's a change. Everyone knows that this is the change that needs to happen, but no one's putting the steps forward to make sure it happens. Everyone's like, this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. No one's doing anything to let it go. What's happening is our leaders, or quote unquote leaders for the community, they're athletes, they're rappers, they, you know what I mean? Like that's who they are. They're quote unquote celebrities. No other community does that. Their leaders are politicians. Their leaders are doctors. Their leaders are lawyers. Meanwhile, we have athletes saying, you gotta go vote. Well, I guess I can go vote. Meanwhile, you have doctors and lawyers and politicians who say this is why it's important to vote, and they tell it to the other people. No wonder they're doing so much better than us. They actually know what's going on. They actually understand why it needs to happen.
I will say some people, or some celebrities, I should say, they're kind of shut down whenever they do try and speak up or anything like that. So it discourages them at some extent to really want to speak out, because if you're just going to keep getting shut out with whatever you're trying to say and push a positive message, then it just goes out the window regardless.
that's why I say our community is not made for us nor by us. If you look at it, these are we'll just accept them and say these are supposed to be our leaders, right? Meanwhile, our leaders are being controlled by other people. Our leaders, the second they speak out, now all of a sudden they're losing their contracts. They no longer have these quote unquote brand deals that they used to have because they're athletes and singers. So that they're losing out on sponsorship. Now they're losing out on their money. So now all of a sudden they're pretty much getting essentially paid off to hush. Oh, you want to keep talking? Take off a zero. Oh, you want to keep talking? Lose another zero. Now they're starting to see their bottom line drop. Now they're starting to recant. So our leaders are being controlled by other people. And on top of that, if we look at it throughout history, any leader in our community who has had any type of positive message, any type of power, they kill them. So now, and it sounds bad, but we have these new quote unquote leaders, and nothing's happening to them. Why? Because they're being controlled. They're puppets, essentially. They're not gonna take out their own people. But now we have our people. When we start putting our own people in place to actually make a decision, to actually make a change, that's when we start seeing backlash and pushback.
Right. And I think we should have a theme for Theta Talk: persistency, because it always comes back down to it. We just always have to keep, striving for whatever we want to. However we're going to succeed, we just got to keep pushing.
Persistency is definitely it. Especially within the community. Because I think the biggest problem is we all see the issue, we all speak on the issue, but nobody's actually taking care of the issue. We're all like, okay, well, somebody is going to do it, but why can't you? Oh, well, this is it. Think about it. All the famous people in history were just one person who had the message and sat there and believed in it enough to actually go out there and spread it. It's the exact same thing. But that actually brings us to our about closing time. Kyle, any closing remarks?
Nah, thank you for having me again. Good to be here.
All right, Ken, closing remarks, ads, anything like that?
Stay positive and be blessed.
Mr. Jalen, anything?
Like Ken said, stay positive, be blessed. Look out on our GSU page for any upcoming events and things such as that.
All right. Me personally, same old. We see that we need to change. Make sure that we go out there and actually make the change. Like they said, keep the eye out. But really, it comes to being persistent. We understand that there needs to be a change. But if we're being honest, the change starts with, the man in the mirror.
That's
Chill out.
Gonna make a change.
Let me say
Oh,
that.
what's in my
No damn.
It's gonna feel real good. Gonna make a difference. Gonna make
And we had about
it
55 people join. 55, 56. I don't know if they say those, but they did.
As I turn up the collar on my favorite